Welcome to the Clinician Voice Podcast. I'm Robin Geiger, Senior VP of Clinician Advocacy for Ingenivis Health. Today, you're joining us for real talk about the struggles of nurses, physicians, and allied clinicians on the front lines of care. We're excited to partner with health executives, clinicians, and industry experts to learn how they're leading through current challenges, shortage, and burnout. And now, let's get into the talk.
I'm delighted to introduce our moderator for this podcast, Ingenivis Health's Chief Human Resource Officer, Ms. Denise Treba. Denise has developed Ingenivis Health's people strategy and leads human resources for our 7 company brands and the clinicians we serve. She guides our direction under the lofty mission of being an employer of choice for healthcare talent. She successfully attained our Great Place to Work designation and has been a guiding light for me with the development of the ACT program. Denise, we're excited to have you and your guests with us today. And now I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate it. And I want to just introduce Joy Turner, who's going to be my co-host today, as we have an opportunity, a very important opportunity, to talk with Joyce Bender. And Joyce, it's so good to be able to talk with you again. I just wanted to say, Joyce has done so much in the area of working with individuals with disability in the employment factor. And Joyce is the founder and CEO of Bender Consulting Services, Inc., and Bender Leadership Academy, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her focus for both organizations is employment for people with disabilities. As a woman living with epilepsy and hard of hearing, she has dedicated her life to a crusade for youth and adults to gain the dream of competitive employment. Joyce works tirelessly to bring down the barriers and stigma that exist for people with disabilities. She serves as the Vice Chair of the American Association of People with Disabilities, as a trustee for the Bazillion Center on Mental Health Law, World Institute on Disability, the National Advisory Group for National Technical Institute for the Deaf, Homeless Children Education Fund, Variety the Children's Charity, Civic Light Opera, Disability Rights of Pennsylvania, and is chair of the Epilepsy Association of Western and Central Pennsylvania. Joyce has been recognized by President Clinton and the President's Award and the Bush administration with the New Freedom Initiative Award for her efforts in furthering the employment and empowerment of people with disabilities. Joyce has served as an expert for the U.S. Department of and is also an expert that has been published in many periodicals. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Geneva College and is the host of the radio show Disability Matters with Joyce Bender on voiceamerica.com. Joyce, I am so honored that you are spending some time with us today. So I'm going to kick us off and have you start to tell us a little more about yourself and how you started the work that you're doing today.
Thank you, Denise, and it is an honor to be here with you. I just want to mention before we start, I always say that when it comes to the employment of people with disabilities, it won't happen unless someone opens the door. We all know that 70% of people with disabilities are not counted in the workforce. And if you don't know, I'm sure you are shocked hearing that, but it's true. We have double the unemployment rate. Without someone opening the door, we can't change that. Denise Treba has opened the door since I've known her for years. She made a point of saying, we want to hire people with disabilities. And by the way, it was at all levels. So, when I say someone is really good, Denise Treba is great. She is really a good person. And I so appreciate her giving us the opportunity to find employment for people with disabilities. So, Denise, to answer your question about me, I grew up in a rural area and I went on to college and got my degree in psychology, and then I got involved in education, and I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my husband and I, which is where I live, and where Bender Consulting Services and the Bender Leadership Academy are located. And you know, during that time when I grew up, I would occasionally faint. And the only reason it was unusual is that no one else in my family would have this happen. I remember once when I was 16 years old and I was at the dentist, and next thing you know, I'm looking around, I don't know what happened, and he said, "Oh, you fainted, you must have been nervous." Well, I am nervous when I go to the dentist, but not that nervous just that one time. So then when I got in my 20s, oh my, it started to happen more frequently, and it was terrible. I would get this feeling in my head. And once it happened, I knew that's it. That's it. There is no stopping this. That thing is going to happen. I'm going to faint and be unconscious. And that's what would happen. And then I would come back to myself. And, I would say, why does that happen to me? So one night, my husband found me unconscious. And off we go to the doctor. And you won't believe this, Denise, but his answer when my husband said, "What's wrong with my wife?" Rather than testing me, he said, "Oh, she's fine. It's just this female hormonal problem."
Mm-hmm.
And why the heck did I believe him? I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
He's a doctor. So I believed him. It's really a miracle that I'm here talking to you, because I was driving the car all this time, not realizing what my disability was, until one night I went to a movie, and at the intermission of the movie, I went to get a soda and I had a seizure. And I hit the floor so hard, I fractured my skull, had an intracranial brain hemorrhage. I broke the bones in my right inner ear, which is why I'm hard of hearing on that side with a 70% hearing loss. I ended up having life-saving brain surgery from that fall. Life-saving brain surgery with the reality that I'd had a subdural hematoma, and they didn't know if I would live. But neither did I live. I had a miraculous recovery. But that's when in intensive care, the doctor tells me, "Joyce, you're living with epilepsy." So what does that mean? That means those faints I used to have were seizures. Because when I did have it happen again, it was exactly the same. Now, thank God I take medication, and that medication has prevented me from having a seizure. So there are over 3 million people in America living with epilepsy. Why it was misdiagnosed is people don't realize more people have a complex partial seizure or an absence seizure or a tonic seizure than a grand mal seizure. So in other words, more people have seizures where they do not have a convulsion, and I was one of those people. So if you have a child, or you yourself, or your partner, or anyone close to you is having something happen, whether it's staring off or for a few minutes looking as if, unable to speak, or of course, falling down or having a convulsion, do not go to the family doctor, go to a neurologist, because only a neurologist is going to be trained, expert to help you with this. So getting back to me after that, what I did for a living was executive search. I worked in executive search in Pittsburgh in information technology. I got back to work in 2 months after that accident. And when I did get back to work, it was only in the next year I heard about a program at Allegheny Community College that would in fact train people with disabilities to be COBOL developers. So a partner from Deloitte called me and said, Joyce, would you mind going to the school just to teach everyone how to interview, how to write a resume? And I was happy to do so. I had no idea, Denise, that the attitudinal barrier toward employing people with disabilities was so horrific that at that time, 90% of people with disabilities were not counted in the workforce. So I'm asking, and many of these students had college degrees, so I'm asking them, well, how many times did you go on an interview and just not get an offer? Oh, no, no one had gone on an interview. No one had called or talked to these students. It was abysmal. So I started doing volunteer work. And after 9 years, I said, that's it. I know people with disabilities can be working as an accountant or in the IT or really most business areas and some industrial positions and many medical positions. I know they can. I mean, what is it? You're at your computer, but you're sitting in a chair.
Right.
So how does that stop you from being able to work? And today we have video relay and all types of assistive technology. So that's how I started. And I started as a for-profit company that would focus on being for-profit for 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted a rich benefits program. And number 2, no pity. One thing you know about me, Denise, it's paychecks, not pity.
Yes. So it's interesting. So that's how you chose employment as your area of focus when you started your company.
Yes. As I said, I was in search, but it became clear to me that people with disabilities had and still do have a high unemployment, double that of people without disabilities. 70% of people with disabilities still not counted in the workforce. It's all stigma. It's all attitudinal barriers. But I know that without employment, you're never free in this country. You can't rent a car or an apartment or live the American dream unless you're employed.
Yeah, very good. Joy, are you, I think this feeds nicely into some of the work that you have been working on with our DEI programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And thank you so much, Joyce, for sharing your story with us. I think that it's so powerful to hear all of the different aspects of your journey. And Denise, to your point, this definitely supports the things that we're doing from a DEI perspective here internally. Joyce, as I hear you talk about that attitudinal barrier that people face as they're looking for jobs, I think about the times where even myself as a candidate, I'm looking at these job applications and thinking, wow, should I disclose my disability on this job application? How will that hinder me? And so as we get into DEI and really building these types of strategies and frameworks that support all people, I think it's so important to consider the community that identifies as having disabilities and making sure that we have resources and support processes in place for them. So when we think about what we're doing here under what we call value and belonging, we're really focused on creating environments where everyone can thrive and making sure that people are comfortable with sharing those pieces of themselves because they know that we're here to support them or provide them with tools and resources in order to be successful in our organization. But we know that all organizations aren't there yet, right? So since Bender is known for its disability employment expertise in the areas of recruitment and workplace mentoring, strategic planning, training, and digital accessibility to drive innovation and help businesses realize business value for their customers, can you share some of the milestones over the years that you've made an impact nationally?
Yes, and I want to say first, when you're talking about your commitment to DEI, I want our listeners to know that Ingenivis came to me, Denise came to me. It was not me calling, as I do with so many companies, trying to get them to even talk about it. And I think that's because of your passion with Disability Equality Index or equity inclusion. And you know, with intersectionality, it's across the board, whether the person's African American, male, female, LGBTQ, whatever protected class group, everyone can have a disability in any area. But with me, probably the biggest milestone happened when I received the President's Award at the White House from President Clinton. And why I say that, the reason I received that award is I was one of the first and only people that started by finding employment for people with disabilities in competitive areas. In other words, I started in IT. When I first started Bender, most people with disabilities were stock person, busboy, waiter, waitress, maintenance, but not competitive jobs, engineering, any of those. I was the one. That's why I received that award. And I think that had a major impact nationally because other companies, I mean, people even would say to me, oh, you mean someone who is blind can work in the computer field? I mean, people did not know. And that really, I think, resonated and had an impact nationally. The other thing is my radio show. When I started, like, I was one of the only ones with Voice America. I've been with them the longest. And it went from that to being on the air 20 years on Disability Matters with Joyce Bender on voiceamerica.com. But having senators, CEOs, Denise, people across the board on my radio show. And that show has caused people to call us that weren't hiring people with disabilities. It has caused people to apply for jobs, that didn't know about this. Also, we are the only show that has on the half hour a news break telling about what's happening nationally in the news for people with disabilities. I think that and the traveling around the world as an expert on the employment of people with disabilities, some of these things, and there are so many that, I'm so thankful in my life that I was able to do, but those are what come to my mind.
Those are amazing.
One other. Starting the Bender Leadership Academy, helping high school students with disabilities fight bullying and be prepared for employment.
Those are such incredible milestones. And I think that as we look at where you started and where you are now, there's so much richness in the story there. I'd love to learn more about some of your current initiatives that Bender's working to advance. You mentioned the Leadership Academy. What else are you all working on right now?
Well, going back to the Bender Leadership Academy for a minute, not only are we doing job preparation and teaching students how to deal with bullying, but we have a mental health initiative named after someone very close to me that died tragically, Mary Brocker. It's called the Mary Brocker Mental Health Initiative. So we now have a national campaign called #NotAshamed, where we have from a country star that was Grammy nominated to NFL stars to people like Valerie Jarrett making these short videos and then putting it on the Bender Leadership Academy. Then at Bender Consulting Services, I have been so frustrated with companies that really aren't doing anything furthering the employment of people with disabilities. Companies sometimes have 100,000 employees and they think if they hire, one person, it's amazing. So I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up with an initiative, and it's called the Bender Quello Consortium. And Tony Quello is the author of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the chair of the Bender Leadership Academy. The Bender Advisory Board. And I thought, we got to do something, Tony, because he's always fighting the fight for employment. So what I did is I started going to companies saying, will you hire 10 people from Bender by the end of the year? Now, did I get some to do this? Yes. But did I have some say no? Yes. I know that's hard to believe, but they would have all these reasons. These are large corporations that they could not do it. Now, I mean, that is a frightening thought. If you have hundreds of thousands of employees and I say, can you hire 10? I mean, I would either hear, oh, we do something on our own, but yet I know if I went to that company, I would not see wheelchairs or service dogs. But, that is currently a very big initiative that we are working on, and our strategic planning. We do strategic planning for companies and assessments, and it has really taken off. So has our digital accessibility because of the new rules and regulations that came out. But those are the things I would highlight.
Those are wonderful. Thank you for highlighting that. I think it speaks to really getting organizations to see the value in expanding beyond their traditional candidate pipeline and making sure that you all as an organization are also providing them the support and resources they need so that the individuals they bring on are successful and they can really see how innovative this untapped community can be as you talk about those unemployment rates. So I love to hear that. Well, thank you so much, Joyce, for providing those milestones and those initiatives. I know that the listeners will be thrilled to learn more about the work that you're doing. Denise, I want to pass it back over to you to talk a little bit more about ways Ingenivis is working to enrich our human resource offerings. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, Joy. Again, we're really kind of following Joyce's lead in many respects because we're building our employer of choice environment and a culture where clinicians can really flourish and stay their whole career within our brands. And part of that is really focusing on the benefits we provide, including a focus on mental wellness. So just as Joyce, you were mentioning having a focus on mental health, we do the same through our benefits programs, and specifically working with Robin and the Ingenivis Health Act program, we've been able to introduce some really phenomenal support tools for our clinicians in the field. In addition, we're also building out our education platforms and have spent a good deal of time really focusing on curriculum for our internal employees in our corporate offices and also for our clinicians. And we've recently had some programs that have been stood up for clinical training that continues to help them be better at the bedside. And to support folks stay longer in their careers and their professional development. So really important work we're doing there as well. The things that I love about working in this area is really the passion about keeping people employed. and really supporting people on their journeys and their career paths. And that's another area that we've been focusing on. And Joy, you've been a big part of the stand-up of our Genevis Employee Career Center, where we're focusing on bringing training, much like Joyce mentioned, helping people with their resumes and interviewing skills and making connections so that people hear other stories about how they got to where they are today and what path they were on and the things that they learned along the way. It's a great way for folks to build their careers to wherever they want to be. So those are just a few of the things, and when we talk about a lot of the things we are talking about as far as employment opportunities, it's truly about learning. And we, as Joyce mentioned, we've been very thoughtful on our curriculum that we've pulled together. And one of those is where Joyce has offered to help us. And I did reach out to Joyce and say, I know you have iDisability, which is a program that you have developed. And it's such a phenomenal way to inform, to enlighten, and to expand perspectives on understanding disability, in particular in day-to-day and in personal life. So that is just another opportunity that we're currently in the process of implementing, rolling out across our organization, Joy. So we're very excited about this. And Joyce, I know that you've got a lot of experience as you've built iDisability and introduced it. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that came about and where it is today?
Yes, thank you for asking, Denise. And my a partner, Andy Houghton, came to me and said, Joyce, I'm wondering what could we do to help with stigma. Now, both of us have disabilities. Andy's a wheelchair user. Of course, as I said, I live with epilepsy and have a hearing loss. And the problem, stigma, fear, ignorance. I mean, people are always afraid, oh my God, I'll hire this person. What if they do something wrong? How will I tell them? And I'm sorry to also say 2/3 of people in the United States are uncomfortable being with people with visible disabilities, according to a very recent study. But iDisability, I thought, okay, if we come up with this training product that Andy was suggesting, if we designed that, hopefully I could break down barriers to see people hired. Because, when they see, oh, wait a minute, this is how you handle interviewing someone with autism, or this is how you accommodate a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder, or this is what long-term COVID, how it impacts disability and your employees. I just believe that education is what's going to open doors for employment. So that is how it came about. But I want to mention that it was 100% designed by people with disabilities and is 100% accessible. It's hard to believe that there are companies that espouse products they sell. I don't even mean training. I just mean across the board that are not accessible. But our website is accessible. And I am just so excited about how it's developing. For example, WQED is the very first public broadcasting station. That's where it started with Mr. Rogers, right here in Pittsburgh. And now they've partnered with us. I'm so excited about this, to work with us on the modules. They have a film academy there where they teach film editing. And, what an honor to be working with them, on improving iDisability and taking it to the next level. So I'm so excited about that. I want to say one other thing. I am going to have some type of module something with Ingenivis, because what Ingenivis is going to do, what I'm working with them on is, they have like a stand-up cardio unit. Of course, you can provide nurses as needed, but really there aren't medical help that understand from autism to epilepsy to a mental health disability when there's a disaster. So if we start in one city, one state, obviously Florida would be an example, we're going to have healthcare professionals trained, and I'm going to tell you, no one else has this, where here they are in a disaster, and they know what that disability is and how to accommodate them.
Right.
So that is something something I really want to see happen that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, and we are working on that. We're starting to really look at the curriculum that we have and how do we really bring this to the clinicians. And I'm working with Robin and Joy to really figure out how we can offer these as CEUs. To where our clinicians, especially those that are traveling to these various sites and go into disasters, do have more awareness of what they may be seeing, in addition to all their clinical expertise, which we know is there. This is an added extra bit of knowledge that helps folks maybe be a little more successful at connecting with individuals to really deliver their expertise at the bedside. So we're very, very excited about how we can build this, and we're looking at different ways right now to continue to develop that curriculum and so that it can be CEU certified for credits for our clinicians. So very, very excited about that. As we're continuing to kind of build out the intent of where iDisability, the curriculum could potentially go, can you tell us about some of the content we can expect to see in iDisability and how clinicians can take advantage of these learnings, how they would potentially relate at the bedside?
Yes. Just to go through a few. One is migraines. People do not realize this, but even in the federal government, a migraine is listed as a targeted disability. Someone has a migraine, what happens? They could be out of work for a week. And then what happens? People say, what? Oh, come on, get over it. It's a headache. I mean, they don't understand this at all. And it has impacted a lot of people in their employment.
Yeah.
So that is going to be one of them. Another is going to be on grief, because grief impacts disability. And when we did a survey, even with people with disabilities, and we had a whole section of choices, that came out: grief.
Wow.
Depression, anxiety. How do you deal with those things? How do you deal with these disabilities and these emotional problems when that happens? That's one of them. Another one we're going to do is sleep disorders, because a lot of companies have no idea how to accommodate sleep apnea or some other type of sleep disorder. So those are a few, but we're going to be able to move fast as we are moving with WQED.
Awesome. It's an exciting future for iDisability. Every year, there's one thing more that I hear iDisability is added, and some pretty phenomenal content. Thank you, Joyce.
That is really exciting. And speaking personally, I've had an opportunity to go through the iDisability content that you all have so far. And I am just so impressed by how in-depth and how intentional you all were with creating that content and making sure that people do have that understanding that not all disabilities are visible. I know you touched on that, how people can get very uncomfortable around people with visible disabilities, but we still have this entire community of folks where you can't necessarily see their disability disability, but it's there. And we really have to understand and learn how to communicate and work with them and support them as well. So I can't wait to see those new iterations and the new modules come soon. I'm looking forward to that. Are there any questions that you would like to ask us, Joyce, Denise, or myself?
Yes. First question. It seems that everyone I've met is so open to the idea of including people with disabilities. No pity, just wanting to provide an opportunity and training, learning more. My question, Denise, is what would you attribute to the fact that it appears across the board, this culture of caring, kindness, and a commitment to diversity? It's many companies, there can be some, but it's not as pervasive as everyone I've met. What would you attribute to that?
It definitely starts with our leadership. Our CEO, Bart Valdez, is a very focused, a people-first person. And the whole focus and passion about building a home for healthcare where our clinicians can flourish, that came from that passion of just really taking care of people. And that exudes to all the other leaders in our group as well. You know, it starts there. And we've really been very thoughtful about introducing programs that continue to build on culture. You know, and we're growing. We're not there yet. You know, every organization has room to get better, but we're on our journey. And we're really focused and have a ton of talent here at Ingenivis Health that's making a difference every day. Regardless of their discipline, everybody's moving forward on building that environment, that culture, that workplace where clinicians and corporate employees can spend their career. They can go between brands, but they can spend their career. And to get there, you have to have a culture that cares. You have to have a culture that's invested in its people, you know, learning, training, as well as, you know, continuing to improve upon communication. So we're on the journey. And again, we have work to do. We know that, but we have got a great foundation, Joyce.
Yes, I can see that. I did want to ask you, for our listeners and for all of our knowledge, what are the main services you provide at Ingenivis?
We really do. It's really a family of brands that have come together, Joyce, and we specialize in healthcare workforce solutions. And what that means is that we provide healthcare employers staffing solutions, workforce solutions, so that they can deliver care at the bedside. So, for example, we do have a travel nurse component. Those nurses can come in and they can work, you know, an assignment up to 13 weeks. They can extend that. But we also have an opportunity for being able to support healthcare organizations in an emergency situations. For example, if there was a major disaster and or something that happened in the hospital that they needed to add staff very quickly, we can come in and stand up teams of clinical care to be able to support that hospital so that those patients continue to have the care that was intended. We have an allied group that provides the same support through allied professions. We also provide locums or physicians and advanced practitioners to healthcares across the nation that need that extra support. Maybe they're growing and they're adding programs and they just don't have enough bandwidth quite yet. We can get them through the interim until they get there. And then we do have our physician services where we literally will come in and stand up cardiology centers, anesthesiology centers, and we're adding more modalities just because maybe a community doesn't quite have enough clinicians to be able to develop these resources themselves within their rural hospitals, but we can be that ancillary arm for them. So we have a family of brands and even specialty technicians that work in cardiology and have a training program where they can certify technologists to become specialized. So we have this beautiful brand, family of brands that is really invested at keeping care at the bedside, delivering care where there may be gaps, and we can participate. So that is what we do, and it's kind of hard to put it in one little package because it really serves as more of a larger umbrella of how we can help and partner effectively with healthcare providers today.
One last question I have. For people with disabilities, let's say, whether they're graduating from high school, a community college, or college, whatever, and they're looking for a profession or some area to work in, would you not say healthcare is probably unlimited?
I think that's very true. I think most people, when they look at healthcare, they think a nurse or a physician. And if you really explore healthcare, there are so many areas. I mean, from the standpoint of if not even just being the healthcare provider, but there is the whole office operations that need to support the hospital. So potentially you've got admissions. You've got those folks that do the scheduling. You have individuals that come in and they may be working in the finance and the accounting areas, the technology field, where you have people coming in and standing up all the systems that support the clinicians. So that's just a smattering of what individuals could have access to. But there's so many fields, from being involved in the imaging area and learning how to use the technology to take the imaging of our patients to even transportation. Believe it or not, there are folks that are coordinating transportation for patients, as well as ensuring that once a patient gets into a healthcare facility, that they know where they're going. So there's a variety of opportunities that are open to individuals that are looking to further their training, come into a healthcare organization for the first time. They just need to connect and explore those opportunities.
Oh, great. Well, see, there's a wonderful opportunity for people with disabilities. So thank you. Thank you so much.
What a dynamic conversation. Thank you both. I know that we could probably talk about these things for hours, but for now, Joyce, can you tell our listeners how they can support your journey before we wrap up for the day?
Oh, thank you so much, Joy. If you are a person with a disability seeking employment, benderconsult.com. Go to benderconsult.com and apply today. If you are a company saying, "Oh my God, we need people. We can't find people, cybersecurity or in healthcare or data analysts," whatever they would be, there is this untapped labor pool. People with disabilities. So please contact us. Give people with disabilities a chance to work. As Tony Coelho always says, give us the right to be fired, meaning just give us an opportunity. And finally, I would say if you want to help young people living with disabilities and you want to help us help those with mental health disabilities in school, benderleadership.org. Go to benderleadership.org today. I'm always looking for people, so I appreciate so much, Joy, you asking that question.
Of course. I want to make sure everyone knows how they can get involved. Thank you.
And Joyce, thank you for being our guest today. It's always such a pleasure to work with you and to learn from you. Joy, thank you so much for being my co-host today. I really appreciate you being here and helping us on this journey as well.
Yes,
Robin?
of course.
Well, I am certainly looking forward to hearing more about iDisability and your progress to support clinicians, Joyce. As this training, it supports all clinicians, physicians, nurses, and allied. So our listeners, please look forward to more from Bender Consulting and Joyce Bender and team. And I would like to thank you, Denise, Joyce, and Joy, for leading us through this discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Same here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Join us next time on The Clinician Voice. Thank you.